Bob likes Platoon, can't you see? And nobody give me shit about his hat not being on right. He has a very big head, and it really doesn't fit considering I have a pinhead. Same with his blouse being unbuttoned. But it kind of fits for the movie Platoon. So this week for Movie Club, we watched the movie Platoon. Platoon came out in 1986, and it's pretty much star-studded now, even though most of these people weren't very popular at the time. It stars Charlie Sheen, Forrest Whitaker, Tom Berenger, Willem Dafoe, Jhonny Depp, John C. McGinley. I mean, it's really star-studded. There's a lot of people in here, and some of those people don't really have very big parts. I mean, here's what the synopsis says about this movie. Here's what I took from the movie. It says that a young recruit in Vietnam faces moral crisis when confronted with the horrors of war and the duality of man. A lot of soldiers I know say they can relate to this movie. A lot of infantry guys, the grunts, they say they can really understand this movie instead of like Apocalypse Now or Full Metal Jacket. They really can associate with Platoon of being there because this movie actually throws you into the grunts' lives. These guys that are out there in the field day in, day out. And that's why I like this movie. It doesn't follow the life of an officer. It doesn't follow the life of a politician or a strategist. It just follows the soldiers that are out there in the field doing their job. When you really break this movie down, to me, it's about the loss of humanity. It's got Charlie Sheen's character, who's a new guy in the unit, and he's trying to fit in, and eventually he does a couple things, and he slowly bonds with the guys. And he meets these two NCOs. He's got Tom Berenger on one side, Barnes, and Willem Dafoe's character on the other side, who's Ellis. Berenger's character is critical to this story because he's a character who wouldn't exist without a war. He's been shot multiple times. He will do anything to beat the enemy. He'll do anything necessary to win the war. If Barnes was a civilian, he would make Rambo look sheepish in that movie. That's just kind of the person that he has become because of this war, and that's the person that he is now, and he can't exactly go back. On the other side, you have Willem Dafoe's character, Ellis. The war hasn't changed him. He still has his humanity, he still has his personality, and he doesn't believe in doing these wrong, atrocious things to people just for a cause that he doesn't really even believe in. He just wants to get his guys out safe. This movie isn't about following a certain objective like Saving Private Ryan where they're going to save somebody. Well, this movie is like, there's targets here are a set of coordinates, here's a set of numbers. It's not people to them. These are just numbers and things that need to go away so they can get out of there and go home. This movie doesn't really talk about the rights and wrongs in Vietnam. It more follows what these guys had to do to get through the next day, whether it was take over a village or hold their ground at night in a firefight. Now, this movie does hit a lot of real areas that were really controversial, not just the atrocities of the war, but also the drug use that was heavily used in Vietnam War. You can see a lot of the clips of the guys smoking marijuana through their guns and everything like that, and that was very historically accurate. And it was really good to see Oliver Stone capture that. And because Oliver Stone actually served in Vietnam, I think he gives the right perspective that these other directors just couldn't get. They didn't have the first-hand knowledge that Oliver Stone did when he was there, what he'd seen and everything. Yes, this movie does have cookie cutter cliches for when it comes to army type people. You have the very green officer who's put in there who tries to associate with the guys, but once he leaves the rec tent, he's just kind of a nobody. And you can tell that he's out of his depth of field. He's trying to lead these guys who've already been here. He's trying his best to help them, even though he screws up here and there. What I really liked about this movie was it followed the seasoned vets, like Barnes. Barnes had been there since the beginning of the war. Same with Dafoe's character. And you can see how they have changed, how they split into two different characters. I like to think that they probably started off as the same person, and then they split. And you can see that later on. It was a My Lai massacre, which is almost the same thing that was starting to happen here with Barnes. Barnes is ready to kill this little girl, trying to get information, and Dafoe comes in and breaks him up and says, this isn't right, this is bullshit. And you see Charlie Sheen's character stop a girl from getting raped. You can see how the sides of the platoon splits between some side with Barnes, some side with Ellis. Charlie Sheen's character is in the middle of it trying to decide. At first, he really liked Barnes. He thought he was a real badass dude. But after seeing his actions when he did that, he went to Ellis's side and he wanted to be more humane. Like I said, though, primary focus was on Charlie Sheen's character. Charlie Sheen was the one who dropped out of school. It was upper middle class family. He just wanted to do his duty. He even says in the movie, why should the poor fight war? And then they kind of make fun of him and kind of call him a crusader here and there. So as Charlie Sheen slowly decides who he's going to follow, he realizes that he has to choose sides. He starts off very scared and afraid to do things, which is really bad for a soldier, because if you're afraid to do your job, if you're afraid to shoot that person, then you're risking not only your life, but the guys behind you. At the very beginning, I was pissed at Charlie Sheen's character when he didn't open fire at the Viet Cong that were coming in, or didn't even let the other guys know. He just sat there and stared at them. That drove me nuts. That pissed me off. I hated Charlie Sheen's character at that point. But he tries to make up for it later on when he kind of just doesn't care anymore, and he just goes on a rampage and starts running through and shooting all these Viet Cong troops at night. He doesn't even bat an eye when he's doing it, too. Another part I have to point out in this movie is his buddy survives a firefight, and he just wants to go home. You can just see he's just kind of done. Well, he takes a knife, and he stabs himself in the leg so he can get medically discharged. But a lot of these characters died, too, and you didn't really associate yourself yourselves with them. You were just kind of thrown into this experience, kind of like Charlie Sheen's character was, and that's what I liked about this movie. I would recommend this movie to my friends. I think it's great. I think it's a classic. I think it's a very vivid, true tale of the Vietnam War and what some of these troops actually had to do. So great pick this week. I can't wait to see what we do next week, and I'll talk to you later, Movie Club. Bye. Get your cover off inside the house.